How's your homeschool life? Let's learn more in this episode.
Hi, I'm Arturo Alindada, and this is my wife, Jackie.
Hi, and we have 3 young kids, and we've been homeschooling formally for about 6 years, but they've been homeschooled since birth.
The main reason why we wanted to homeschool our children is because my exposure to the traditional form of schooling here leaves so much more to desire for than what is ideal when it comes to education for children. So we knew from the beginning that if we wanted to give our children the best kind of education, that it would have to be in our own home.
Fortunately for Arturo and I, even before we had children, we already made that commitment that if ever God would bless us with children, we will homeschool. And He did. So I guess that's where we are right now.
And mainly because of our exposure to the homeschooling under Deona Tanchi, I also grew up in a non-traditional education environment, and I knew that the traditional schooling system that we have in our country is still very far from what is ideal.
To begin with, we all wake up late because we're a nocturnal family. So our homeschooling actually begins usually after lunch. Kids get started with their workbook, so there are certain subjects that we follow. We have a schedule, but also 3 times a week they do art and craft because for me it's really part of their curriculum. It's not just an extra thing for them to do.
We get a teacher for that.
Yeah, we have a teacher for that. And usually what happens is there are times when I really get impatient with my kids, especially when we're now doing the academic subjects. Turo here is the principal. When he already hears me raising my voice, he'll say, stop, 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 take a break. You take a break, kids take a break. So that happens often in this house.
Our homeschooling environment is very relaxed, and we more often than not do not follow the schedule than follow the schedule. Our whole idea of what homeschooling should be is that it should just come naturally, it should just flow. It's not something that is regimented.
Plus, I also do a bit of work. We also have a home office setup here, so we just go around it. I have to admit, initially I struggled for that first year because I just felt overwhelmed with, for grade 1, she has to study all of these different academic subjects, and I felt like parang hindi tama eh. And then one day, a co-homeschooling mom introduced me to this book called Teaching the Trivium. When I read it, it really opened up my eyes about why we homeschool, what homeschooling is all about, and it gave me a perspective. And because of this book, in fact, I would call it my Bible of homeschooling. It helped me a lot in how I homeschool my children now, because especially there's a chapter here, when your children are all ages 10 and below, academics should not be the focus. In fact, the author recommended only 10 things that you should focus on when your kids are that young. Basically, just for them to learn how to read, write, a lot of play, field trips, arts and crafts, work and service, discipline, all of that. In fact, doesn't even mention academics. Why? Because they're saying a kid's brain, parang computer, nagbubuta pa lang yan. It's not ready to receive all of this information for memorization or whatever until they reach the age of 10. Only then will they be able to, parang magkiklik lang one time. And what I did was, I tried that on Anya. At the time when I read this book, she was like 7, 8. So I literally set aside all the science, social studies, Filipino books. I just retained our math and language. And even our mystery of history, which is part of our social studies, world history, I set that aside because I felt like I don't think she's ready for all of this information. So what happened was, so I set it aside for 2 years. I had all those books, but for 2 years I didn't touch it. And then last year when she turned grade 5 at the age of 10, I introduced all of these, like especially the mystery of history, and boom, just like that, she was like absorbing everything like a sponge. And for me, it proved the point of these authors. In fact, the authors, I now have I'm in touch with them personally through email because they gave me permission to even share these to other homeschooling moms, which I have done already, to really help those that are considering to homeschool or those that are homeschooling young children, not to get too pressured with we have to do all of these academics with our kids because it really doesn't help. And that's why it also stresses us out as parents. Like me, I don't have a teaching background.
It liberated us.
It liberated me, it liberated us, and even it liberated the way we homeschool our family. And like what I said, our homeschooling is really not just confined at home. We do a lot of trips, both local and abroad, and even when we're out.
The world is our class.
Yeah, we can do anything, we can do it anywhere. So that's what our homeschooling approach is like.
To encourage other homeschooling families out there, it's just education. So there's nothing complicated about education. God created our children and created our children with brains that naturally desire to learn. So our job is to get out of the way. It's not to impede the desire for learning because they naturally crave, just like a baby craves for milk when he's hungry. That is the kind of brain that God has created in our children. So we should just relax and let it just flow. So all of you parents out there who are so stressed, it's simply because you don't relax. Okay, there's no Nobel Prize to win in education. Okay, so you don't have to worry because God takes care of everything.
Oh, and I'd like to add, and also, let's not compare our children with other children. So never compare because kids develop at their own pace. Like what he said, God designed our children, God made them uniquely, individually, so they develop at certain pace. So just like what he said, relax, and that's what I'm trying to do.
Next on values, joyfulness.
Welcome to today's episode of Values. Values you can use. So the topic we're going to talk about is joyfulness. Now, if the word isn't self-explanatory on its own, the verse we're going to use is Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. So what is joyfulness? It is being able to say, if Jesus is the Lord and Savior of my life, He's in my heart, then there is no excuse for bad attitude, for grumpiness, for grumbling. You should be joyful.
Yeah, I just want to share, this is something our kids struggle with. Of course, also us, and we have to model it. But I remember one of our sons, Elijah, our eldest, he has pretty bad eyesight. When we first discovered that his eyesight was really bad, it really broke his heart because he's a reader. He loves to read, and his biggest fear was going blind. And he loved God, he would read his Bible, and yet he discovered that his eyesight was really bad. Right now it's about 450, 475, which is high for a 13-year-old. But his encouragement was remembering that God loves him, God has a plan for him, and when he focused on those things, then he chose to be joyful, chose to be happy despite his circumstances. I think the reality is, despite our circumstances, we can make this choice. And we have a friend, her name is Priya, and I love this illustration because she has a bunch of people that work for her, and when they're grumbling with one another, when they're irritated with one another, she says, okay, we're all gonna stand up and we're all gonna jump up and down and say, I'm happy, I'm happy. And she commands them to do this. And at first they're awkward, but then as they do it, they start to smile and laugh because they realize when you decide something with your mind, then your emotions follow. And I think it's the same thing for our children as well.
So, two practical ways of how you can help instill joyfulness in your children. Number one, tell them straight. When you're coming from a long car ride, they're grumpy, they're tired, you look at them and say, hey, is Jesus in your heart? And if they say yes, then you say you need to change your attitude. And you'll see that. The emotions aren't always there necessarily, but they will choose, as Joy said, to be joyful. They will change, do what they're supposed to do. Number two, and very important, across all the values, we must show it ourselves. Are we joyful? We cannot ask our children to do something we do not do ourselves. So those two practical tips on instilling joyfulness, honey. Joyful, yes. My joy, I'm full of joy. Enjoy. God bless.
Don't you just love this segment on values? Great answers! Oh, wait.
Teacher-centered or student-centered? I say, make your homeschooling teaching method learner-oriented. Learner-orientedness includes the following. One is active learning. This is when students solve problems, formulate questions, answer their own queries, brainstorm, discuss, and be able to debate them. Another is cooperative learning. This is when students as a team would work on their projects and problems. In homeschooling, this is achieved through learn groups or through family outputs. Another is inductive learning and teaching. This is when students are presented with a challenge and allowing the students to address the challenge themselves. Go ahead, pose the challenging question to your child and let them soar. Happy homeschooling!
Coming up, Jessica for Out of the Box.
Welcome back to Out of the Box. I'm Cheska, and today is all about travel blurb. Travel blurb is a hilarious on-the-go game of rapid word recall. In other words, it's a fast-paced game to test your knowledge of words. The game is for 3 or more players, ages 10 and above. So here we have the Travel Blurt Kit. You've got 1. A deck of double-sided word cards with an easy side and a hard side. 2. A pack of magnetic pieces that you can use for the magnetic scorecard on the cover. Are you excited to play this game? Let's try it out. You start with one player being the reader. And basically, you take turns drawing a card and reading them out loud for the others to guess. Yes. From the draw side, pull the card out until you reveal the first section. Tell the other players the number of points on the left side, then read out the clue. Whoever blurts out the correct answer first gets to move their piece up at the scoreboard. Earn 12 points to win the game. There's also a one-on-one option where a player can challenge another player to go head-to-head.
Okay. I'm gonna challenge chess.
Of course, I'm not going to tell you.
The way out of our or what? Yeah.
This has been your Out of the Box buddy, Cheska, and I'll see you soon. Bye!
Can you block pala? There's wind there. Are you getting hit by the wind?
No.
Sure?
No, I like it because it's cold.
No, but for the microphone.
Okay. The game is for 3 players. Sorry. So here we have the trouble.
Cheska got it right?
I'm a good one. I'm a
You're awesome.
The answer is.
Oh my god.
Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next episode. Bye!